Thank you, Laura.
You're
Are
welcome.
the spreadsheet or not spreadsheets,
Reports?
the bill tracking reports in the same location?
Yes, they are.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
My pleasure. It's Amanda who did it. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda, wherever she is. Oh, she's
She
on.
is here.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah. Good morning.
Mhm.
Ready to kick off, Laura? You want me to go?
Absolutely.
Slurping another swig of coffee to get things going. So happy Friday, and at the end of the first week of the 2026 session, this is the legislative update call for environmental topics. I'm going to take a moment of liberty to mention a couple of things that are happening in the environmental space that are significant that are not in the legislative arena. So just before I dive into the report, I want to highlight a couple of things. One is something that actually came out last week, and I meant to cover it. We just ran out of time, but Florida signed on to let me back up. The Waters of the United States definition is open and being revised by EPA and the Corps of Engineers. The comment period closed on January 5th, and the state of Florida signed on to a multi-state comment letter. I won't spend much time talking about where the state landed on and the other coalition states landed on this, but they will look for a summary article on the Florida Specifier website that I co-wrote with the specifier team, summarizing Florida's position and where this definition issue is currently.
Can this go in the chat? Can you put that letter in the chat?
Yes, sir. Although just to be shamelessly promoting the specifier, the letter will also be in the link to the article. It'll be linked in the article.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right, y'all. Let's dive into I guess I should mention this too. The nationwide permits for the Corps were also reissued last week. And the 401 certification process rule also that affects the Clean Water Act. The EPA announced an update to the 401 certification rule. So a lot of things are happening at EPA right now. Just keeping tabs on some of those things. I'll cover some more of those probably through the specifier. All right, so let's dive into environmental bills moving this week. As we do each week in the report, you'll see that they're ordered by last action. So as the session matures, the bills that are moving are going to rise to the top, and the ones that are kind of stalled or stagnant are going to fall off the bottom. I think we're over 30, maybe up to 40 now on this report. I'll definitely pause on the ones that I think have either are moving or are poised to move. But I'm happy to answer any questions from any of y'all on these. And this report, I'm very happy that we've got this new format this year. You can click on these links. These are all live links here to the bill numbers, and they will pop open a page that looks like this that will give you the summary, will give you the committees of reference, will tell you where, how far they've moved. In this case, this bill, the OSTDS permitting bill, has been referred to 3 committees of reference. It's in the first one, Environment and Natural Resources, and it is on the committee schedule for next week at 1 p.m. So this is quite a nice little tool for figuring out where bills are, how far they have to go. So this is at its first stop. It is scheduled to be heard next week. And then this is the link to the actual bill if you want to read the bill itself. Once it starts to move, there will also be some committee bill analysis available on the same web page. So it's a pretty nice tool. So this is the OSTDS bill. There is another bill by Nix that has not moved at all and hasn't been calendared yet. This bill, the Senate version by Senator Martin, has been scheduled for next week at its first committee of reference. This is the one we talked about it very briefly last week, but this is the one that removes the requirement to have a septic tank permit before you could get a building permit or a plumbing permit. So now you can proceed with your building and, or get, obtaining your building and plumbing permits, start a construction of a single family residence while your OSTDS or your septic tank permit is still pending. And of course, you have to have your septic tank permitted and installed before you can get a certificate of occupancy. So it just changes the sequencing of permitting. And this was being promoted by the building and development industry to help reduce the time lags associated with permitting these things. We got our first winner of the race this year. We have a bill that has already passed the House. The bill by McClure on former phosphate mining lands. We talked about it very briefly last week. It sets up some liability relief for former phosphate mine sites and has some actions for DOH regarding gamma radiation surveys and documentation. And all of that did pass. It was not a clean passage. You could see it kind of looks like it fell on more or less party lines. So maybe got a little bit political. There is no Senate companion, so that's notable. So unless something gets amended on to something else, it is too late to file a new bill. So this may just be a bill that passed the House and doesn't do anything this year. So anyway, just notable that that's already gone through and there's no Senate companion. Conservation lands, some of these are started. Yeah, this has passed through its first committee of reference. It was at the Senate Environmental Natural Resources Committee meeting this week. I attended that meeting and heard a little bit of commentary on it, but it passed unanimously with an amendment by Mayfield. This is there's just one of two bills that are related to or say conservation in them. This one, conservation lands, was the one about the Acquisition and Restoration Council. And I think it merges it or makes some action changes to the Acquisition and Restoration Council for the acquisition of conservation lands and does a few other things related to that process. There's another bill called conservation easements, and I keep getting them tangled up in my head, but that's the one that expedites the release of conservation easements if they're appropriately replaced and follow procedures. But anyway, this one moved through its first committee of reference. I think the House version has also passed the first committee of reference by Kendall. So this one's moving. The preemption bill. So this one's called Land and Water Management by Maggard, and the Senate companion by McLean is just water management. Both of these bills do more or less the same thing. They preempt to the state all regulations related to wetland buffers and any kind of environmental or water related regulations. So this made it through the first committee stop on the House. It was split 11-5 and will be headed to the next committee in the House. On the Senate side, it has not been calendared yet. So no movement yet on the Senate. This is the companion conservation lands bill that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. The DAX bill by Truenow is making progress in the Senate. It has been through two committee stops. So this current reference of fiscal policy is still true. It hasn't been referred to rules yet, but it did pass fiscal policy this week. So it's been through two committee stops. Yeah, here's the reference right here. So this is all correct information. It's been through committee stop 17-3 at fiscal policy. It hasn't been referred to rules yet. There is not an exact companion bill, but 433 by Alvarez is really close to the same bill. This has got a bunch of different things in here related to and involving or touching DAGs. There's the things that are most interesting in the environmental world are probably the biosolids provisions in here, but there's a lot of things in here from concealed weapons permits to biosolids to, gasoline powered farm equipment. So you'll see it's a catch-all for agricultural stuff. The House companion was referred to 4 committees of reference and has not been calendared to its first committee. So it's got a difficult path in the House. Even though it's already moved through 2 committee stops in the Senate, it's by no means guaranteed to pass the whole process. Stormwater treatment by True Now, we talked about last week. It did go through the first committee of reference. This week, the House Companion by Gonzalez Pittman was referred to 2 committees of reference just yesterday, late yesterday. That's not reflected in this report. It hasn't been calendared yet, so it's been through 1 of 5 stops, and I'm continuing to watch it closely. Beach management passed through Senate and Environmental and Natural Resources this week. There are some provisions in here that are folks that track or follow or involved in the beach restoration program will care a lot about. I still have not done a deep dive on this, but it's moving on the Senate. The House version has not been calendared yet, so no movement yet on the House Companion. This bill 1089 and the companion 1196, this is a retread of a bill last year. This is a very narrow bill that specifically prohibits a waste to energy facility at a specific location, and I think it's in either Western Broward or Western Miami-Dade, but it definitely is a local issue that is on this list just because it triggered our statutory references since it's solid waste and waste to energy. But it didn't pass last year. I don't know what the politics around this are, whether it'll pass this year or not, but it's going to affect a waste to energy facility in Southeast Florida if it passes. There are 2 sets of PFAS bills this year. Connerly's bill has been calendared for next week, so I think we'll start to move. Let me triple check that because I may have misspoken. All right, so it is referred, but it is not on the schedule for next week. I apologize. But Connerly's bill is more narrow. It is mostly related to the locations where AFFF, that's a firefighting foam that contains PFAS, where that has been stored at fire stations. It creates incentives to help those fire stations remove the last of that material, get it cleaned out and replaced with the PFAS-free firefighting foam, and provide some liability protection, around that activity, along with some potential funding if DEP can identify a funding source to help local communities and fire stations and people that store that for training or for operation to help transition to the new foam. So it's pretty narrow. Harold's bill is identical and is on the calendar for next week. So that's where I had that in my head. So this bill, this PFAS bill, I think is moving and likely to go through. When I get to the other PFAS bill, I'll explain why it's different, and it seems less likely to move this week. One of our members reached out about this data center bill. There's something in here that I haven't quite got my finger. Oh, I know, it's this consumptive use of water. So there's a little bit of an overlap with some environmental regulations, in this case, water use regulations, that caused me to flag it. It's on the list. If you're interested in kind of data center regulation, then you're joining a large group of legislators that are getting their heads around it and starting to get interested in regulating it. The governor's made some comments about it. Seems like he's not a huge fan of locating a lot of these in Florida because, for a lot of reasons, but one of them is the energy use and the water use. So this is a bill that's moving. I don't believe it has any type of companion in the Senate, and I haven't seen any other data center bills actually. But I'll keep an eye out. This infill development I added this week. There is a Senate companion. This is about affordable housing and trying to incentivize local governments to stack more density in primarily, well, entirely urban areas and provide some fast track approvals for sites, even if they have environmental, recognized environmental conditions or they're located in brownfields. It's really a zoning bill. It's not an environmental regulation bill, but it touches a lot of environmental programs. And so I put this in here as an FYI. The brownfields folks are watching this very closely, and I know we've got some overlap between our group and the brownfields community. This is the companion of that waste to energy bill that I mentioned earlier. The water management districts bill by Broder and the companion by Connerly is really close to the bill that almost made it through last year. This has a lot to do with the reporting and accounting of progress of the completion of. It's hard to imagine that we're talking about that, but we are talking about remaining costs to complete the Everglades program. So there's a lot of interest now that maybe you could start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. There's a lot of attention by the legislature on kind of tracking progress and remaining funds needed for that. And this bill accomplishes that. Obviously there's some other things in here too, but that's really the big thrust of these two bills. I don't think there's been movement yet on either of these. Let me just double check. Yeah, no movement in the Senate and no movement in the House. Y'all can check these things too. I've got two screens up, so I'm just clicking on it to check my info, but y'all can click on any of these and get the update too. There are some biosolids besides the tax bill that has some biosolids provisions in it. There are two bills that are directly addressing biosolids, and 1294 by Bradley has been referred to committees but has not been heard yet or calendared yet, and the companion by Schoaf is in the same situation. If you're interested in biosolids, do look at both of these. Lot going on here to address nutrient impacts, and I haven't seen PFAS pop up in here, but there's definitely a linkage between biosolids and PFAS application. Keep an eye out for those things to get linked together at some point. All right, here's the other PFAS bill. This set of bills by Berman and Long. The Berman bill was referred to 3 committees. The Long bill was referred to 4 committees, which normally is a death sentence for legislation. It's too many committees to get through in 6 weeks, particularly when the subcommittees stop meeting at the end of week 4. But this bill has a requirement to adopt standards, interim screening values until EPA finalizes the remaining PFAS standard, or the standards for the remaining PFAS compounds, and then has a strict prohibition against the use of PFAS foams in firefighting, after certain dates. Probably not big issues with that latter part, but the mandatory passage of interim values until EPA establishes final values. I think some people are squawking about that. And then it does impose a ratification process, or ratification of any cleanup standards as well. Again, we're keeping an eye on it. My gut tells me that this doesn't pass in its current form. There may be some changes to Connolly's bill, maybe a provision of this gets moved over to the other set of PFAS bills. I still think something is going to pass related to PFAS this year, but probably not this bill in this form. 1457 is the companion to True Now's 848. Hasn't been referred, has not been calendared yet on any committees. It has been referenced to 2 committees now. Okay, the DEP bills. I'm very interested in these DEP bills, and I think this group should be too. It's an omnibus. It's got a lot of different things in there. It repeals the ERC, moves those functions, or absorbs those functions in DEP. There's some requirements on septic tanks. There's requirements on BMAPs. There's some permitting and license fees issues. There's some grant issues. There's all kinds of stuff in this bill, and its companion 1510. So I'll be keeping a close eye on these bills, and I think y'all should too. It has not been calendared for anything yet. This is being run by, it is the DEP bill this year, so do keep an eye on this one. Okay, yeah, here's the biosolids companion bill. We just talked about the other one just a minute ago. Wait, please, sorry, forgive me. There are two sets of biosolids bills, so I want to make sure I don't misstate that. So this one is different from the bill I just mentioned a minute ago. Um, uh, more narrow and prohibits the land application in certain sites. The other one is more about regulation. Has a lot of new requirements for Class AA, how and where it's authorized. How, you know, it has got a lot more meat to it, and has imposes some new requirements on DACs to publish agronomic rates for the application of Class AA's. The other bill, so the one by Schoaf and the companion is more broad and more policy focused. This is about prohibiting biosolids in certain locations. So that's the Gates Broyles pair. And I hate these sessions when we got two different sets of bills on the same topic. I'll get them straight in my head. Okay, Surface Waters by Garcia and the companion by Cross. This is a retread of a bill last year that would have done the same thing. It imposes a standard for assessing impacts to submerged resources, like think coral reefs or seagrass, and switches from a UMAM method to the habitat equivalency analysis method, or HEA method. And then there's some other things in here too. If that's a topic that interests you, do take a look at those. It didn't pass last year, and I don't know, whether it's got a lot of chance this year. We talked about, I butchered the biosolids bills. This is the big biosolids bill is Schoaf and Bradley. The little biosolids bills are Gates and Boyles. And then finally, we're getting to bills that, well, I guess it's too soon to say that. This is a bill that probably doesn't have a chance to go, and there is no House companion. This was filed by Senator Smith in the Senate, and it imposes mandatory septic tank inspections on homeowners, among other things. Many of you will have been around long enough to remember the last time that topic was brought up by the legislature and passed, and then very quickly repealed. This was not a popular idea back then, and I don't know that it would be popular today, but anyway, it has no House companion, probably isn't going to move anywhere. The resilient buildings bill is on this list. No environmental significance here, but it does expand the eligibility for certain tax credits to resilient building types. So I threw it on here because of the resilience connection. Some of y'all may be interested in that. It does create some new things, like this Florida Resilient Building Advisory Council. So it's imposing some, or would expand some things in the resilient construction industry that maybe some of you would be interested in. So it's on the list. This is the PFAS bill. That's the we talked about earlier. That's the companion to Berman's. The infrastructure and resiliency bill by Lamarca is really similar to this resilience building bill by Rodriguez, so it's on the list. Does a lot of the same things. And then at the beginning of this presentation, I talked about the conservation easements as a separate topic to the conservation lands bill. This is conservation easements by McLean. There is a companion by Dugan. This bill is the bill that requires the water management districts to release conservation easements if certain provisions are met. That was a bill that that went pretty far last year, didn't get all the way through, and so it's back this year. Here's another bill that's kind of first time we've ever had something like this reported to the legislature. This is a bill, I talked about it briefly last week. No action has happened this week in the House or the Senate on this topic, but it's run by McLean in the Senate and Gentry in the House, and creates a new program, Safe Battery Collection Recovery Act, and a new office at DEP to for battery stewardship, and is of course intended to improve the recycling of all these new batteries and battery containing products that are just in everything now. So that's a new thing. I don't know whether it'll go yet, but keeping an eye on that. This waste management bill by Martin and the more or less companion bill by Esposito, it's very close. This is the plastic bag ban issue. It's related to that issue. So, if you hear auxiliary containers, think, plastic garbage bags at Publix and plastic and paper containers at takeouts and all that kind of stuff. They're, back in the 2010 era, this was all preempted to the state, prohibiting local governments from promulgating a wide variety of bans, here or there for certain types of auxiliary containers. That was all preempted to the state until DEP accomplished some, large study on it. This bill basically extends that preemption. The study was done and the preemption remains in the state. So there will be no jurisdiction if this passes, there won't be a city by city, plastic bags are banned here, they're allowed here, they're banned here, they're allowed here kind of situation. I think that's what they're trying to solve with that. McLean's preemption bill to the state for all of the environmental regulations. This hasn't been referred yet on the Senate, making some progress in the House. And then Connerly's South Florida Water Management District bill, we talked about that issue before. So we're starting to get to some of these, the companions down here at the bottom of the list. There's the companion for the septic tank permitting bill. All right, here's another new one we did talk about this week, but we talked about it last week. This is the landscape irrigation bill by Trunow and Cobb. Referred to 4 references in the House. No progress in the Senate yet. Looks like I would say this is going to be a big lift this year for a couple of reasons. One that we as engineers probably don't like, and that is it creates and then preempts to this new profession of professional landscape irrigation contractors, not just the installation, maintenance, and operation of these, think large commercial or large irrigation systems, but it also preempts the design of those things to licensed irrigation contractors. So that's the professional concerns angle. But there are the other issue is that in a session where the legislature is considering deregulating professions, the idea that there would be a new profession created just seems kind of at odds with the big picture in the legislature this year. So I don't see this thing moving this year. The stormwater pipe bill that mandates using DOT specs and supersedes all the local standards. This is not moving. We'll keep an eye on it though. The nature-based solutions bills, there has been movement in the Senate version. This actually went through its first committee of reference before Christmas, so it got some early progress. So this is for adopting rules and guidelines for nature-based solutions for coastal resilience. So think, living shorelines and stuff like that. There have been bills related to this topic for a few years, and this seems to be following that trend. The House companion is not the same. It has some of the same elements, but Mooney's bill 1035 has some, he's a Monroe County guy, and it's got some authorization of dredging and filling of certain seawalls and shorelines in Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve. authorizes some specified structures within aquatic preserves. So it has some more things in there besides the coastal resiliency rules. So, not sure that this has a clean path, but this topic is still relevant. And so we'll keep an eye on it. Here's the companion bill for landscape irrigation. And then here's the companion DAX bill. And here's the companion auxiliary containers bill. So these are starting to just be repeats of companion bills that we've already talked about. And that's the end of the list. 9:31. Sorry to keep you guys late. I will try to go faster next time by just focusing on the bills that are moving and not trying to get through the whole list. Deirdre, sorry, I didn't see you. I wasn't paying attention to my screen. Welcome
No,
again.
I
I'm glad you joined us.
I just raised my hand. I just wanted to let everybody know, on the federal level, just a quick update for funding for water infrastructure in particular. The Senate passed minibus yesterday, which included funding for Interior and the Environment, which funds EPA and of course the Department of Interior, as well as the Energy and Water bill, as part of a three bill package. And so it's on its way to the president. It was passed last week, and the EPA bill, the EPA funding will fund the clean water and drinking water state revolving funds, WIFIA, emerging contaminants. It also, the annual funding will also trigger the release of annual appropriations in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as Bill, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which passed in 2021. This will be the last year of that supplemental funding. So just broad top line. I haven't gotten into the details of the funding, but they maintain top line funding for the clean water and drinking water SRFs, but then divert about 60% of the funding to earmark. So if you have an earmark that was in the House or Senate bill, the final appropriations did reduce the earmarks a little bit, but I'm not sure from where. Those will be funded. And then I think WIFIA maintains the same level of funding for water infrastructure. And then of course, all the other bills. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up. The Congress is about halfway through their appropriations, so halfway through the 12 bills that fund the government. And so if we do have a shutdown, it will be less than half of the government will be shut down. So half of the government will keep working. So I just want to give that little heads up to everybody.
That's great info, Deirdre. Thank you for sharing all that. I'm going to come to you for more updates on what's happening in Congress on the funding side. I don't track that stuff at all, but that's fascinating. Thank you. Appreciate that. I know we're running a little late. Does anybody have one last question? If I can't get to you today, please email me. I'm happy to follow up. And again, next week, now that we're through the first session and I feel like I have the whole list of everything that we're tracking, next week and weeks thereafter, I'm gonna spend more time on the bills that are moving and almost no time on the bills that aren't. So unless you guys ask me or bring something up, I'm just gonna focus on the bills that are moving. Anything else for the good of the order? All right,
Thank you, Jeff.
everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Jeff.